It was one of those cold January mornings where even the sky seemed tired, a flat blanket of gray hanging low over the streets of Baltimore. Adrian Brooks, CEO of a boutique tech firm, walked briskly past the corner cafe, his mind already rehearsing the day's meetings. He wasn't in the mood for detours, for conversations, or for feelings. That part of him had been boarded up years ago, neatly tucked behind spreadsheets and conference calls. But the soft voice that stopped him didn't come from a boardroom, and it didn't ask for quarterly reports. "Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy just for one day?" The words halted him mid-stride, salt crunching under his polished shoes. He turned slowly, unsure if he'd imagined it. There, standing at the edge of the cafe doorway, was a little girl no more than 6. Her coat was zipped up crooked, 2 braids coiled tight on either side of her head, 1 ribbon half undone. A red backpack hung off one shoulder, frayed near the seam, and her gloves didn't match. But it wasn't her clothes that caught Adrian's breath. It was her eyes, big, brown, and shimmering with something heartbreakingly between hope and apology. He blinked. "What did you say?" She stepped forward, breath misting in the cold. "Just one day. Tomorrow is Daddy Day at school. Everyone's bringing their dads. I don't have one. But I saw you, and you look like you might be good at pretending." He felt the punch of those words in his chest, like they bypassed skin and bones and landed straight in the part of him he thought was numb. Her backpack, the gloves, even her stance, it all brought back memories of his son Eli, long gone but suddenly vividly present. That backpack was the same color Eli had begged for on his 6th birthday. Those mismatched gloves? Eli wore them the exact same way, claiming it made him look like a space explorer. Adrian's throat tightened. I'm sorry," he began, stepping back. "I don't think—" The girl's face fell instantly. "Okay," she whispered, already turning away. She didn't cry. That's what gutted him most. She just walked, shoulders hunched in quiet defeat, boots muffled in the snow. That kind of sadness didn't scream. It seeped under your ribs and stayed there. "Wait," Adrian said, louder than he meant to. She froze mid-step. He took 2 strides forward, his voice lower now. "What's your name?" "Nora," she replied without turning. "Nora Moore." From inside the cafe, a soft voice chimed in. An older woman seated by the window had witnessed the entire exchange. "That little girl's got something in her," she murmured to no one in particular. "Something that glows." Adrian looked at the woman, then back at Nora. Just then, a woman hurried over from the sidewalk, hair messy, coat too thin for the weather, eyes shadowed by more than just exhaustion. "Nora," she called gently. "Sweetheart, we talked about this." She looked up at Adrian, cheeks flushed with cold and embarrassment. "I'm sorry, sir. She's been talking about this Daddy Day for weeks, but I didn't think she'd actually—" Her voice faltered. "Celeste Moore," she added, extending a gloved hand. Adrian took it. "Adrian Brooks." There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "I think we met, years ago, through the Literacy Initiative?" Adrian nodded. He remembered now Celeste had run one of the community programs his company donated to. Sharp mind, quiet presence. Now she looked worn, not just by winter, but by life. "We'll be going," she said quickly. She meant no harm. Adrian looked at both of them, Celeste's knuckles chapped raw, Nora's tiny figure already retreating into herself, and something inside him moved. "I'll do it," he said. Celeste blinked. I'm sorry. Tomorrow, Adrian repeated, clearing his throat. What time? Nora lit up like someone had plugged her into the sun. 8:15, she beamed. At the south entrance, I'll be wearing my sparkly sneakers. Adrian chuckled, the sound foreign and warm in his own ears. Sparkly sneakers. Got it. Celeste hesitated. Are you sure? You don't know us. I know enough, he said. The older woman in the calf smiled behind the glass. Celeste didn't argue. She just nodded slowly. Thank you. For real. Nora stepped forward and slipped her small hand into Adrian's gloved one. You'll be great, she whispered. You look like someone who knows how to fix broken things. The line hit him again. But this time, he didn't flinch. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. His penthouse buzzed with the ambient hum of city life elevators, engines, far-off sirens, but inside it was too still. He poured himself a bourbon, turned off the news, and stood by the window. In his mind, her face returned over and over Nora, with her hopeful eyes and that ribbon slipping loose. You look like someone who knows how to fix broken things. Eli used to say that every time a toy broke, every time he skinned his knee, every time he cried in the dark and needed reassurance. Adrian turned from the window and walked to a closet he rarely opened. Behind forgotten golf clubs and winter coats sat a plain box. He pulled it out, wiped the dust from the lid, and opened it. Inside were relics, tiny sneakers with worn soles, a stick figure drawn labeled Me and Dad, and a single blue glove. Only one. Eli had always lost the other. A single tear slipped down Adrian's cheek. The next morning, Adrian dressed deliberately. Navy coat, soft wool scarf, hair neatly combed. But under the armor, his heart felt newly exposed. Outside PS 212, a line of dads stood with daughters, some adjusting backpacks, others awkwardly braiding hair. Then Nora spotted him. Her sparkly sneakers flashed as she sprinted toward him. You came, she cried, grabbing his hand like they'd known each other forever. Of course, Adrian said, smiling in a way he hadn't in years. I gave my word. Celeste approached, neater today, though the weariness still lingered. Thank you again, she said formally. Call me Adrian, he replied. It's my honor. A staff member handed him a sticker. Guest, Dad for a day. He stuck it on and followed Nora inside. The classroom buzzed with crayon chaos and the chatter of little voices. The teacher, Miss Delaney, smiled but raised an eyebrow. Nora, is this your father? He's my borrowed dad, Nora whispered proudly. Adrian's chest tightened. The day passed in a blur of glitter glue and graham crackers. Nora showed him her art, her favorite books, introduced him to classmates with a possessive joy. During snack time, he stepped into the hallway to grab a vending machine coffee. Celeste was seated on a bench nearby, staring out the window. You didn't have to stay, she said as he approached. I wanted to, he replied, offering her a cup. She accepted it like a lifeline. Most men would have smiled and walked away. Most men haven't lost what I've lost, he said softly. Her eyes met his, searching. A child? He nodded. Eli. 10 years ago. Drunk driver. Celeste exhaled. I'm so sorry. I never thought I'd step into a school again, he admitted. But your daughter, she has a light. Celeste smiled faintly. She tries to fill in holes, even when it's not her job. He studied her face. There were tired lines, but strength, too. She's lucky to have you. Celeste laughed, not unkindly. Some days I skip dinner so she doesn't notice we're short on groceries. Some days I patch her clothes with tape, parenting awards aren't knocking down my door." "You're present," Adrian said. "That's more than most." They sat in silence, the hum of classroom doors echoing around them. Then Celeste whispered, "You know what she told me last night?" Adrian shook his head. She said, "Mommy, I think he's sad like me." Adrian looked away, throat tightening again. "She's not wrong," Celeste added gently. "And neither are you. You fix something today, even if it's just for one day." Adrian didn't speak. He just nodded slowly. When they returned to the classroom, Nora ran up and held up a crayon drawing. It was a big man in a coat holding hands with a small girl in glitter shoes. "Is that me?" Adrian asked. "Yup," Nora grinned. "And I gave you matching shoes this time." He laughed, genuinely ruffling her hair. When school ended, Nora clutched his hand tightly. "Thank you," she said. "It was the best day I've ever had." Adrian looked at her, eyes full. "It was the best day I've had in a long time." Celeste looked over. Adrian felt it then, something shift. Maybe it was the way Nora leaned into his coat. Maybe it was the way the snow began to fall again, soft, forgiving. Maybe, just maybe one day wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. Adrian didn't expect the silence in his apartment that night to feel so loud. After the day he'd just had with sparkly sneakers, juice boxes, and Storytime on a rainbow rug, the stillness felt like exile. He walked through his penthouse like a ghost, past glass furniture and cold light fixtures, into the kitchen where a bottle of wine stood half-finished from some previous evening he no longer remembered. But tonight he didn't want wine. He wanted to hold on to the warmth in Nora's eyes when she read him her story about the magical tree, or the way Celeste had looked at him not with gratitude, but with quiet respect. Something had cracked open inside him, and the air rushing in was sharp and new. He turned on his phone, intending to check the weather for the next day. The first message stopped him cold. It was a forwarded link. No sender name, just a blue bubble with a single sentence. "You seeing this?" He tapped. A photo loaded. It was him, crouched down beside Nora at the winter fair, her perched on his shoulders in the knit cat ear hat he'd bought her. Both of them were laughing, mid-motion, blurry with joy. Below the image, a headline, "Powerful CEO's secret family, tech exec, Adrian Brooks spotted with unknown woman and child in Harlem." He stared at it, his stomach dropping. It was just a local blog, nothing reputable, but in his world, perception mattered. Clients read these things, board members gossiped behind closed doors. The idea that something so pure, so real, could be twisted into scandal filled him with fury. He was still sitting at the counter when his phone rang again. This time, it was Celeste. He picked up quickly. "I saw it," she said without greeting. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "I've been getting calls from the library board. Gregory Sloan, he's one of our major donors. He says this is compromising." "Compromising?" Adrian's voice sharpened. "We took a child to a winter fair. This isn't scandal, it's life." "He doesn't see it that way," Celeste said. "Neither do his friends. They've been after me for months, hinting that I'm not adequate, that Nora would be better off with someone else." "Someone like him?" Adrian asked. "Gregory's wife Evelyn is Nora's godmother. They've been using that connection. They have money, lawyers, influence." She hesitated. "They're threatening to file for temporary guardianship." Adrian stood, nearly knocking over his chair. "That's not going to happen." "I'm not so sure," Celeste said softly. "Gregory's already brought up your name. He's suggesting I use Nora to manipulate you for donations, for access. He's framing this whole thing as a stunt." "That's disgusting," Adrian said, "and it's false. I know that. You know that. But the system doesn't run on truth, Adrian. It runs on optics. And right now, those optics are complicated." Adrian paced his living room, his hand gripping his phone so tightly it creaked. "Then let me help. I'll get my legal team involved." "No," Celeste said quickly. "That's exactly what they want. If I lean on you, it'll look like I can't stand on my own, like I'm dependent, weak." "You're not," he said. "You're the strongest person I've met." "Doesn't matter. I can't give them any more ammunition." Her voice softened. "You have to walk away, at least for now." Adrian froze. "You're asking me to disappear?" "Just until the hearing," she said. "Please, Nora can't lose me. And if that means I have to lose you for a while, I'll do it." He didn't answer. He couldn't. The silence between them said everything. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Goodbye, Adrian." The line went dead. For a long time, he stood still in his apartment, the city buzzing past the windows like it didn't care he was breaking. Later that night, he took the wooden plane from the shelf and sat on his couch, turning it in his hands, thinking of the way Nora leaned into him, how her laugh cracked through his quiet grief like sunlight on old glass. He wasn't angry at Celeste. She was trying to protect her daughter, but it didn't make the silence any easier to bear. 2 days passed, then 3. No calls, no texts, just an aching space in his chest where their voices used to echo. On the 4th day, he walked to the library. He didn't know what he'd say, only that he had to see her. Celeste was behind the checkout desk, her hair tied back, cardigan sleeves rolled to her elbows. She looked up when he entered and froze. "Hi," he said. "Are you okay?" She motioned him toward the break room. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, casting everything in cold white. "I got a threat," she said quietly. "Anonymous envelope, no return address, just a photo of you and Nora, and a note." She pulled it from her bag and unfolded it. He read it. "You should be more careful who you let near your daughter. Some shadows wear nice suits." Adrian felt his blood chill. "It's them," Celeste said. "Gregory, Evelyn. They're playing psychological games now." "I'll handle it," Adrian said. "No," she snapped. "You don't get to swoop in and save us. That's not safe. Not for you, not for her." "Then what are you saying?" "I need you to step back," she said. "I know you care. But right now your presence is hurting more than helping. I have to fight this alone." Adrian looked at her. She was trembling, but her spine was steel. He nodded. "If that's what you need." She didn't answer. That night, Nora asked, "Is Mr. Adrian coming tomorrow?" Celeste hesitated. "Not for a little while, sweetheart." Nora looked down at the drawing she was coloring. Another picture of the 3 of them. She didn't say anything. She just quietly flipped the page and started a new one, this time with just her and her mom. In his apartment, Adrian stood at the window, the wooden plane still in his hand. He thought of Nora's voice, Celeste's eyes, the way the world seemed warmer when they were near. He didn't know what came next, only that whatever it was, he wasn't walking away. Not really. Not ever. Celeste sat in the waiting room of the Baltimore Family Court building, her back straight, but her fingers clasped so tightly they ached. The fluorescent lights above buzzed a dull, sterile tone, and the beige walls looked like they had absorbed generations of grief. Beside her, her lawyer, a tired public defender with circles under her eyes and a file so thick it barely fit in her lap, flipped through notes and whispered reminders. Nora sat between them, legs swinging, quietly coloring in a sketchbook with a half-broken crayon. Across the room sat Evelyn and Gregory Sloane, looking like they were dressed for a corporate gala instead of a custody hearing. Evelyn wore a pearl gray blazer and a scarf that probably cost more than Celeste's monthly rent. Gregory leaned over and murmured something in her ear, smirking just enough to make Celeste's stomach churn. The petition had come fast, filed with stunning efficiency just 2 days after the blog post surfaced. The Sloanes were pushing for temporary guardianship of Nora, citing unstable conditions in Celeste's home and questionable associations damaging to the child's emotional development. They had the money, the connections, the lawyers. What Celeste had was grit. And Nora. When the court officer finally called, "Case of Sloane versus Moore," Celeste's heart jumped, but her feet moved on instinct. Inside the courtroom, the judge, a black woman with eyes that had seen everything and forgotten nothing, took her seat and scanned the paperwork. "Ms. Moore," she said without looking up, "you're contesting the petition for temporary guardianship?" "Yes, Your Honor," Celeste answered, voice steadier than she felt. Gregory stood with the practiced calm of a man used to boardrooms and microphones. "Your Honor, we are not trying to strip Ms. Moore of her rights. We are simply requesting temporary oversight to ensure Nora's well-being during this volatile media situation." Evelyn remained seated, her face arranged in a perfect expression of dignified concern. "My wife and I offer stability," Gregory continued. "We have the financial means and emotional bandwidth to support her development in this critical phase." Celeste's lawyer began to respond when the courtroom door creaked open. Heads turned. Adrian Brooks stepped inside, not in a tailored suit, but in a dark sweater and coat, holding a slim folder. The air shifted. The judge raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Adrian Brooks," he said, stepping forward. "I have evidence relevant to this hearing." Gregory's face twitched. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "I'll allow it," the judge said. "Approach." Adrian did, calm and deliberate. He handed over the folder. Inside are emails and financial transfers between the Sloanes and a blogger who published defamatory stories about Ms. Moore and myself. There's also a signed affidavit from the blogger admitting he was paid to fabricate the story. The judge opened the folder, eyebrows climbing as she scanned the documents. Gregory's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is circumstantial at best." "Sit down," the judge said without looking up. Adrian continued, voice firm but clear. "Ms. Moore never exploited her daughter or used me for gain. I came into their lives by chance, but I stayed because I chose to. Because Nora is extraordinary. Because Celeste is one of the strongest people I've met. And because the Sloanes' concern for her is not rooted in love. It's rooted in control." Silence followed. The judge tapped her pen against the file slowly. "I'll review this thoroughly. Until then, all current custodial rights remain with Ms. Moore. Court adjourned." The gavel fell. Celeste exhaled, her body deflating like a balloon finally unknotted. Adrian turned to her slowly. "I hope I didn't overstep." She stared at him, emotions rising like a wave she couldn't hold back. "You did exactly what needed to be done." From the bench where a bailiff had kept her entertained, Nora came bounding forward, stickers stuck to her sleeves. "Are we going home now?" Celeste knelt and touched her daughter's cheek. "Yes, baby, we are." As they stepped out into the cold air, Gregory's voice rang out behind them. "This isn't over." Celeste didn't turn around. "Maybe not," she said, "but it's not yours to finish." That evening, Celeste stood in her kitchen stirring a pot of soup, the rhythmic motion grounding her as steam fogged up the window. Nora sat at the table, coloring again, this time with a bit more joy in her lines. Adrian had left after walking them home, but his presence lingered. She kept replaying the moment he stepped into that courtroom, uninvited, unafraid, holding that folder like a sword. She had fought so long on her own, she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone show up without being asked. The doorbell rang just as she ladled soup into a bowl. She wiped her hands on her apron, heart skipping. But it wasn't Adrian. It was a courier holding an envelope. No return address. Her name printed cleanly across the front. She opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a photo. Nora on the school playground taken from across the street. And a note. No words, just the image. The message was clear. They were still watching. The soup went cold. She didn't sleep that night. When she walked Nora to school the next morning, she checked every passing car, every lingering glance. She kept her phone in her hand all day, but didn't call Adrian. She didn't want to pull him deeper into a battle that kept changing shape. But on the third day, he came. She was at the library desk, scanning returns, when his voice cut through the quiet. "Hey." She looked up, startled. "Hi. I've been trying to reach you." She hesitated. "Can we talk?" She led him into the staff room, the door clicking shut behind them. "I got another threat," she said, pulling the photo from her bag. His eyes darkened. "I'll take care of it." "No," she said, "not this time." "Celeste." "You can't be our rescuer every time. It's not safe for any of us. If you're always saving us, they'll always have a way to make you the problem." "So what are you saying?" he asked quietly. "I'm saying I need to fight this alone. For now." He didn't speak. She did. "I know what we are. I know what you mean to Nora. But if staying close to you means risking her future, I have to pull back." His hands curled at his sides. "You think walking away is safer?" "Not safer," she said, tears brimming. "Just smarter." He nodded, slowly. "If that's what you want, it's what she needs." He turned to go. Nora's drawing from the day they met, still taped to the fridge, caught his eye. "She won't forget me." "She won't," Celeste said, "and neither will I." When the door closed behind him, she leaned against it and let herself break for just a minute. Later that night, Nora asked again, "Is Mr. Adrian coming tomorrow?" "No, sweetheart," Celeste said gently. "Not for a little while." "Did he stop loving us?" "No, baby. He's just being careful." Nora nodded, then whispered, "I miss him already." "Me too," Celeste replied, holding her close. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian sat in his office in the dark, the wooden plane on his desk, its broken wing pointing upward. He wanted to storm into Gregory's world and tear it down brick by brick. But Celeste was right. This wasn't about rage. It was about patience, about choosing the fight that mattered most. He turned the plane over in his hand and began planning. The courthouse loomed large against the overcast Baltimore sky, its stone walls soaked in decades of disputes and resolutions, victories and defeats, whispers and screams. But today it didn't feel intimidating. not to Adrian Brooks, who stood at the top of its steps with a folder in his hand and a steady breath fogging in front of him. He was no longer unsure. He was no longer pretending. He was here not for charity, not for guilt, not even for redemption. He was here for family. A few minutes later, Celeste arrived, Nora holding her hand tightly, her red peacoat buttoned all the way up and the same cat ear hat from the winter fair perched proudly on her head. The moment that she saw Adrian, she broke free from her mother's grip and ran toward him without hesitation. "Mr. Adrian!" she squealed, flinging herself into his arms. He caught her effortlessly and breathed in the faint scent of peanut butter and crayons in her hair. "Hey, Starshine," he whispered. "You miss me?" She nodded against his chest. "Mom said you sent pancakes." Celeste approached, slightly winded but smiling despite herself. "She insisted on coming today," she said softly. "I'm glad," Adrian replied, his eyes not leaving hers. "You really think you're ready for this?" she asked, voice low. Adrian held up the folder, its edges neat, contents lethal. They crossed the line. It's time we do the same. Inside, the hearing began with formality. Names were read, dates confirmed. The judge, a different one this time. Younger, sharper, flipped through documents with clinical efficiency. Gregory and Evelyn Sloan sat in their tailored armor, their lawyer as smug as ever. He began with a confident summary, reiterating claims of Celeste's instability, the media scandal, and Nora's need for a more secure environment. Celeste sat still, her spine straight, her hands folded. She didn't flinch. When it was Adrian's turn, he rose without ceremony and walked to the center of the room. "I'm not Nora's biological father," he began, "but I know what it means to love a child more than you love your own breath. I've lost that once. I won't lose it again." He paused, letting the weight of the silence settle. "I didn't meet Celeste and Nora because of some calculated move. I met them by chance, and I stayed by choice, because Nora is bright and brave and kind, because Celeste is fierce and generous and selfless, because they gave me back something I didn't think I'd ever feel again: purpose, connection, family." He turned to the judge, voice softening. "The folder I submitted contains not only evidence of a smear campaign orchestrated by the Sloans, including paid articles and anonymous threats, but also an affidavit from the very blogger they hired. It's all their emails, wire transfers, screenshots." The judge flipped through the pages, her brow furrowed. Gregory's lawyer rose to object but was silenced with a raised hand. "These are not the actions of concerned godparents," Adrian continued. "They're the actions of people who see a child as leverage, not a person." The judge looked at Celeste. "Do you have anything to add?" Celeste stood slowly. "I never asked for any of this. All I've ever wanted is to raise my daughter in peace. I've worked late nights, skipped meals, sewn clothes by hand, and told bedtime stories even when I could barely keep my eyes open. Nora is my world, and if you ask her what she needs, she'll tell you what I already know. She needs to be seen, heard, loved, and she is, every day, by me and by Adrian." The judge nodded. Then something unexpected happened. Nora tugged at Celeste's sleeve. "Can I say something?" Celeste hesitated, eyes darting to the judge, who raised an eyebrow. "Let the child speak," she said. Nora stepped forward, her small boots tapping against the courtroom floor. She faced the judge directly, a picture of quiet courage. "I want to stay with my mommy," she said. "She always kisses my forehead. She knows how to make my tummy feel better when it hurts, and Mr. Adrian reads with the best voices. He's not my real dad, but he listens like one. I don't want to live in a big house with quiet carpets. I want to live where there's pancakes and stories and hugs." The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned back. "I've seen enough." She closed the file slowly. "The petition for guardianship is denied. Permanently. The court recognizes Mr. Adrian Brooks as a consistent and beneficial presence in the minor's life. No further actions by the petitioners will be entertained unless substantial changes occur. Case dismissed." The gavel fell like thunder. Evelyn Sloane's perfectly composed expression cracked. Gregory looked like he had been slapped, but none of that mattered. Not anymore. Celeste turned toward Adrian. Their eyes met, and this time she didn't look away. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Adrian shielded Celeste and Nora as they made their way to his SUV. Nora climbed into the back seat and curled up, exhausted but safe. Celeste turned to Adrian as he started the engine. "Do you think it's over?" "No," he said, "but it's finally ours to write." In the weeks that followed, the chaos calmed. The library reinstated Celeste's grant after a public apology. Gregory Sloane quietly resigned from the board. Adrian's company took a minor PR hit, but nothing they couldn't recover from. More importantly, he stopped checking his inbox obsessively. Instead, he began memorizing Nora's bedtime routine. On a quiet Saturday morning in early spring, Celeste stood near the community library's front table as families bustled around the annual books and brunch event she had helped launch years ago. Nora darted between tables in a purple t-shirt that read, "Readers are leaders," organizing donated books with impressive authority. Adrian helped carry boxes, his sleeves rolled up, his smile genuine and unguarded. "She's got your fire," he said as Celeste joined him. "And your calm," she replied. "That's not what my board would say," he joked. "Any more fallout?" she asked. He shrugged. "A few investors pulled back, but we gained more than we lost." "Are you sure?" she pressed gently. Adrian looked at her. "I built that company to fill a hole. You and Nora filled it with something real. That's what matters now." From the main stage, the host tapped the mic. "Next up, a very special guest, and one of our most generous supporters, Mr. Adrian Brooks, reading a surprise story with a very special assistant." Nora squealed, grabbed his hand, and dragged him up to the stage. Celeste moved closer as they sat in the reading chair together. The book cover gleamed in gold. "The Day I Found My Family." Adrian began reading. The story was about a little girl and her mom who lived in a small apartment filled with dreams. One day, they met a man who had forgotten how to smile until the little girl reminded him. They went on small adventures, fought invisible monsters, and discovered that being a family didn't mean sharing the same last name. It meant showing up. When he reached the last page, Nora took over, reading proudly, and then one day I asked him, "Will you stay?" And he said, "Yes." And that's how I knew my family was never pretend. It was just waiting for the right time to begin. The crowd clapped. Some wiped tears. Later, as the fair wound down and the sun dipped low, Adrian and Celeste stood under the cherry blossoms in the park. "I was thinking," he said, reaching into his coat pocket, "maybe it's time for the next chapter." He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold ring. Nothing flashy, just honest. "Not because we need a wedding, but because I want to make a promise to you, to her, for every chapter ahead. Celeste stared at it, at him. "You don't have to say yes today," he added, "or next week. I just want you to know I'm not going anywhere." She took the box slowly, her fingers trembling. "You already gave us everything," she said. "This is just the ribbon." And then she rose on tiptoe and kissed him. Not the kind of kiss that ends a movie. The kind that starts a life. That night, back at the apartment, Nora sat on the couch with a bowl of popcorn wrapped in a blanket. Celeste joined her. Adrian followed. The movie played, but no one really watched. They leaned into one another, Celeste against Adrian, Nora against both. The light from the screen flickered across their faces, but it couldn't outshine what they had already found. Love, not loud, not dramatic, but real, earned, and quietly, stubbornly, unbreakable.